level design. It's defined by game developers in a variety of ways. When I talk about level design, I'm not talking about asset modeling or realistic visuals. Level design is the black art of finding the fun in a segment of game content. It's about the challenges, rewards, and rhythms of events a player encounters during the gameplay experience. After I finished the basic prototype for TiltBill, I found myself at a loss when trying to design levels for the game. I knew the challenges, rewards, and enemies to include, but arranging them in a meaningful way that would make the game fun was not easy or straightforward. I researched level design extensively, reading every article and watching every video I could find on the topic. My solution for TiltBill was to create a level design philosophy. I then followed that philosophy all the way through the development cycle. And now TiltBill is an award-winning game that I am extremely proud of. In this video, I'm going to share the level design philosophy I developed for TiltBill, along with visual examples. Strap in for the ride, let's get going. I'll use Super Mario Maker 2 for showing examples of the philosophy, since it uses mechanics, challenges, and skills that most gamers are familiar with and can easily understand. I don't claim to be the world's premier level design expert, nor is this the only true way to implement a quality level design philosophy. Even if you don't use my level design philosophy verbatim, I hope that the information you find in this video will at least serve as a good jump-off point to molding your own. My level design philosophy, which I will henceforth call severe level design, is divided into 7 categories. Challenge cadence structure, clear level direction, difficulty curve, checkpoint placement, level area usage, satisfying secret placement, and finally, level aesthetics. These categories can apply to just about any type of game, but we will use Super Mario Maker 2 to demonstrate examples of each category. The fundamental element of interaction in a game level is the challenge. Challenges are arranged within a larger structure called a cadence. Each challenge within the cadence should have a safe area on either side, giving the player a chance to breathe between each iteration of the challenge. We will introduce the first challenge of the cadence, called the standard challenge, in its most basic form. We then evolve the standard challenge in some way to add variety. We then expand the standard challenge or the previous evolved challenge to add more that must be overcome to complete the challenge. Now, we have a couple options for how to end the cadence. One thing we can do is create a mutated challenge, which is some kind of variation on the expanded challenge. Here, we don't want to make the mutated challenge more difficult. Its purpose is to add a variation on the expanded challenge. Another thing we can do is evolve the expanded challenge in some way. Yet another option is to expand the evolved challenge. In order to break up the cadence with some variety, we will insert a punctuating challenge that has nothing to do with the standard challenge. The punctuating challenge should not include new enemies or concepts that the player hasn't encountered yet. It should rather be something the player is already familiar with. Don't make the breathing moments between challenges too lengthy or tedious. Having long periods of downtime between moments of tension can lead to the player becoming bored. Let's take a deep dive and explore some examples of challenge cadences. In our first example, this Goomba serves as our standard challenge of the cadence. Then we have an evolution of our standard challenge. We still have the Goomba as the star of the show, but also must watch for the jumping piranha plant that's been thrown into the mix. Now we see the expansion of the standard challenge. We are now facing 2 Goombas instead of just 1. The Munchers serve as our punctuating challenge, just to shake things up a bit. We cap off this cadence with an expansion on the evolved challenge that combined the Goomba and jumping piranha plant by adding another Goomba to the mix. Let's rewind back to the beginning of this cadence and notice the safe areas we installed between each distinct challenge. We don't want too much breathing room between challenges. Just enough to give the player a moment to relax. In another example, we have a single skewer as our standard challenge of the cadence. Now we have an evolution on the standard challenge, which involves the skewer being turned 90 degrees and changing up how the player must overcome the challenge. Next, we encounter an expansion on the standard challenge. We must deal with 2 skewers instead of just 1. A spike top enemy serves as our punctuating challenge to shake things up a bit. Finally, we cap off the cadence with an expanded mutation of our evolved challenge. We have 2 skewers here oriented in different ways. Now let's notice the safe areas after each challenge we throw at the player. Again, we don't want too much breathing room between challenges. Just enough to give the player a moment to chill between moments of tension. Avoid reusing cadences in your game. Each game level or area should have its own unique challenge cadences. The goal here is to prevent cadences from becoming repetitive, predictable, and therefore boring. Keep players on their toes by consistently introducing new cadences that challenge the player's skills in various ways. Now let's take a look at our challenge cadence structure checklist. Do the challenges evolve and expand appropriately? Do appropriate safe areas exist between challenges? Does the cadence avoid too much downtime between challenges? Does each cadence include a punctuating challenge? Do the level's challenge cadences uniquely set it apart from other levels in the overall game? Are the cadences unique to the level? Enough about challenge cadences for now. Let's move on. One of the worst things you can do in most game genres is to leave players clueless about what they are supposed to do. While secrets and other optional content can be hidden, the critical path for a level should never be so obtuse that it takes good luck or unreasonable levels of experimentation to find it. The critical path of a level should be accessible and obvious enough for fair gameplay, even if it is simply following a generic direction such as move to the right. In this example, the critical path seems to end at a bottomless pit, and even though there's a pipe here, you cannot enter it. As it turns out, there are some invisible blocks here to get you to the next area of the level, but this is bad design for the critical path. Hidden and obtuse ways forward like this should be reserved for secrets and other optional content. The critical path should also avoid blind leaps of faith. In this example, we seem to be at the edge of a cliff where we can jump off, but have no way of knowing if the jump is the correct choice or if we will simply plummet to our death. A much better way of doing this is placing coins or some other kind of encouragement to jump off of the cliff so that players are reassured of what they are supposed to do. With all that said, let's take a look at our clear level direction checklist. Is the player's goal appropriately clear and obvious? Is the critical path obvious and accessible enough for fair gameplay? Does the level avoid inappropriate leaps of faith, especially for the critical path? Enough about clear level direction. Let's move on. When introducing a new challenge, adhere to the show, don't tell principle. Sometimes using a new skill or overcoming a new challenge can feel dangerous. So it's important to start off each new obstacle with an appropriate training wheels challenge that allows failure without a significant penalty. As an example, here we are challenged with a swinging claw. There are two things to notice about this challenge. First, there is no penalty if we fall from the claw. We simply have to try again. Secondly, we must swing from the claw properly in order to proceed any further. This guarantees that the player has properly learned how to overcome the challenge before proceeding to more difficult territory. This kind of roadblock in the level is also called a skill check. Generally speaking, organic difficulty is asking the player to learn and master the skills being used in the game. Artificial difficulty is something you want to avoid. Artificial difficulty involves the use of dirty tricks, nasty surprises, and trial and error cycles that frustrate the player. I also call these gotcha moments. Here we see a hidden block being used to troll the player to death. This is especially unfair since the penalty is death and the player has no way of knowing the block is even there. It's as if the game said, "Gotcha." Other gotcha moments can simply consist of trapping the player where there is no way of completing the level. The critical path should always be available to complete, no matter what power-ups you do or don't have. If you can get trapped in an area where your only choice is to let the timer run out, that is really bad design. Another way to prevent completion of the critical path is to require a power-up that the player may or may not have available at the time. Special considerations should be employed to guarantee a possible way to complete the level, no matter what state the player is in. A couple more notes about difficulty. The level should gradually become more difficult as you near completion. Each level should also be slightly more difficult than the last, especially in a more linear game. Difficulty should steadily move up through the game to match the increasing skill level of the player. There really isn't any better way to determine if you are on the right track with this than playtesting. Have others play your levels and get feedback and watch how they play your levels without your instruction or direction. Let's take a look at our level difficulty checklist now. Does the level include an appropriate training wheel challenge? This isn't required for every challenge, but should be included if the challenge can be dangerous and requires a bit of skill to use. Does the level avoid gotcha moments that treat the player unfairly? Does the level's difficulty grow throughout the level appropriately? Is the level's difficulty too low or high considering its placement in the overall game? Well, that's it for part 1 of Severe Level Design. Please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when part 2 is released. Part 2 will cover checkpoint placement, level area usage, satisfying secret placement, and level aesthetics. Visit the iOS App Store today and download TiltBill, the game I developed this design philosophy for, so you can see more examples of it being put to use. Signing out, this is Jason from Severe Studios, wishing you a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, see ya!